Hey guys, coming into me another movie for guys, continuing my 31 days of horror movie reviews. This is day 16, and this movie that I'm going to be reviewing continues my reviews of George A. Romero's classic zombie movies, starting with Night of the Living Dead. And now I will be reviewing the sequel to that movie, and that is the 1978 horror classic Dawn of the Dead. Now I know some people might have wanted me to review the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead, which some people even say is better than this one, which I can understand from some standpoints, but I really didn't know how this movie was going to be, mainly because I don't hear it talked about as much. I hear Night of the Living Dead talked about a lot more than Dawn of the Dead. I heard Dawn of the Dead's a really great movie, but I don't really hear it talked about as much, so I really didn't know what I was getting into with this movie. But I have to say that I loved Dawn of the Dead for the most part. I think Dawn of the Dead is a masterpiece of a film. I think it surpasses the original. I really loved it, I have to say, and overall, it is an absolutely fantastic movie, and I think it's definitely better than the first one. And I'll tell you guys why. There are definitely some things I like more about this one than the first one. And the concept, again, is pretty simple, just like the first one was. The concept here is definitely pretty simple. We have basically the US has pretty much gone to shit. I mean, they're trying to do pretty much it's us against these zombies now. It's us against them. Of course, we do refer to them as zombies in this movie. And they just don't seem to be going away. It seems like they're going away, but it just seems like they're more and more multiplying, and there are more reports about it on TV and the government, and basically a bunch of people are faced up against them, and some people from the government and this television studio, they all go to this mall to basically protect themselves, and chaos ensues, and that basically is a plot of Dawn of the Dead. So I really do love the plot of this movie, I have to say. And you can tell from the plot that the stakes are definitely more higher this time, and that's something I definitely really loved about this movie, I have to say. Something I enjoyed right off the bat, definitely. Um, I really like that. Um, Now, I will say this is not really a movie I can talk about in terms of acting, because I think everyone really does give a great performance, but there's not really a standout. Although I do think there are some standouts here. I will talk about everyone individually. David Emgry as Flyboy is great in this role. He is fantastic. You really see how he wants to, he basically, a lot of the characters in this movie, they wanted to make it seem like they know what's going on with, what's going on. I mean, he's just as, uneducated as everyone else in this. They don't fully understand what's going on. He doesn't really fully understand it either, but he's doing whatever he can to survive, and he's trying to do whatever he can to protect them, and I definitely really love the best character. Ken Foree, though, as Peter, was a badass. I thought he was awesome. He was really awesome in the movie. He's willing to fight off whoever gets in his way, and I thought he did a great job in that regard, as did Scott Ranger. I also really like the character of Galen Ross as Francine, who is pregnant at the start of this movie, and that's a big plot point in the film, and you really see how she deals with this, knowing she's probably never going to have this baby. It's very sad to see that with her character, but I definitely really like that, and I thought overall these four did a great job as an ensemble. Something I loved about the acting in this movie is that, like I said, I can't really talk about as much because it's not as a thing in this movie. A lot of this movie deals with how these four survive in a mall, and the chemistry between these four is just, between all the actors in this movie are just great. They do a fantastic job, and I definitely thought they all were fantastic, I have to say. The directing by George Romero, I really do admire. But before I get into that, I really do want to talk about, we have to talk a little about George Romero's history. As we know, he did co-write the film with, someone else. What was his name? I can't remember his name right now, but he did co-write the film. Um, this movie is part of the Living Dead series. You know that, and if you guys didn't know that, well, it is. It is part of the Living Dead series. It is part of the Dead series. It is not part of the Living Dead series, and I will tell you guys why. Right now, basically, George Romero, as you know, he wrote the film with John Russo. He wrote it with John Russo, and basically, what happened between these two is they just didn't really. Well, wait, did he write it with John Russo? I'm trying to think of who he wrote it with. Hang on, let me figure this out, because I know the story of this. I need to make sure I get the right name. So give me 1 second, guys. All right, all right. So as we know, him and Dan O'Bannon wanted to make a film together. They wanted to make another film, but unfortunately they clashed a lot because Dan O'Bannon had a much more ridiculous, silly tone to his films, while George Romero wanted to go, with the dark tone of his films. And unfortunately they clashed, and that's why George Romero went on to do the Dead series while he did the Living Dead series, which I will check out the Living Dead series probably next year. But I think his directing in this was fantastic. You can tell that he wanted to step it up as best as possible, but did retain the same elements that the first movie had. This is a very dark movie. The stakes are much higher because most of this movie, there's no, they're in a mall. It's not as easy as staying in this farmhouse. It's much easier for the zombies to get there, and there's more and more of them. There are less humans on the earth in this movie, and it's getting more and more severe, and you really do see that as this movie goes on. And I thought they did a very good job with that. You really see how high the stakes are and the tension, and that's something I thought was definitely very well done. His directing was great and was definitely very well executed. The writing, though, is very interesting because I think while this movie is a character piece, it also does have some fantastic violent moments. Really is like a character piece here because, again, how are these four characters going to survive in a mall? It's a big question. What do you do in a mall when it's just you and there's nowhere else to go? You have to stay confined in this mall. And the way the characters interact with it, I thought was definitely very interesting. And the backgrounds all these characters have, too, are extremely interesting. And I really cared about every single one of the characters, I have to say. I didn't really think there was one that I didn't care about. But what I also really loved about George Romero's writing is, again, the way he handles the exposition in this movie. Once again, we still have the same knowledge we had in the first movie. The characters in this movie start out with the only knowledge they know of these zombies to be, there's more and more of them multiplying, and the only way to kill them is shoot them in the head. That's it. And we start to find out more and more as they go on, and this time they do it through a radio. It's all through a radio, and I think that's very clever the way he does that, so that way it's kind of like the audience is finding this stuff out as the characters do, and that's something I really loved. But also, since there's, more technology available, they use, like, TV screens, they use, all kinds of different things. It's very interesting the way they handled it, and some of the best parts of the movie are the news reports because they get more and more severe as the movie goes on. You start to realize just how dangerous the situation is, which I definitely really loved, and I thought was definitely very well done. There's not as much, and also something he definitely stepped up with are the kills in this movie. Holy shit, there's a lot more. Like I said, the first movie didn't have a lot of kills, but that's because back then at the time, you couldn't really do a lot with that because there were certain rules. But this one, now there are no rules. Now it's no longer the 60s. It is now 1978. It is much more common to have blood and gore in this movie, and you really see how he took advantage of that. He took advantage of that, but it didn't deviate away from the movie. It just, I think, showed how more severe things were. The characters in this movie don't really get a lot of time to breathe, and it made sense for this kind of movie. And I can understand if someone has a complaint with that, but my response to that is that there's really no time for them. They could be having a conversation, and then a random zombie just attacks them. It's just the situation they're going through, and there's really nothing they can do about it. That's something I thought was definitely very well done, and I really like that. And I also found the story to be a lot more compelling in this movie because it's really a movie where you don't know what's going to happen. Night of the Living Dead was kind of formulaic with them in this farmhouse. It is still a great movie, but I think with this one, the stakes are just more higher, and I definitely really love that. The cinematography as well, he really did step it up too, because of course this movie was in color while the first one was in black and white, and you really see how he took advantage of that. The kills in this movie are gruesome, they're gory, and they're downright scary. Just knowing that they're in a mall and zombies could come up to them at any point is very scary to think about, and I thought they did a very good job with having that genuine fear throughout the movie. I was quite terrified of what was going to happen at several points in the movie. One of the most terrifying scenes by far has to do with this it's like I'd say like an hour into the movie where they're in this car and this zombie slowly approaching them. Holy shit, I had no idea what was going to happen, and I definitely really love that, and that's something I thought was definitely very good. Something I was going to say in the writing is that I like the way the characters are done in this movie. The characters in this movie are, they try to keep thinking we're going to beat these zombies, but as the movie goes on, they realize that they're just not as powerful anymore. These zombies are a lot more powerful and that they're not going to be able to defeat them. It's very sad, but that's kind of what this movie's trying to show, and the big message of this movie is kind of that we're all a zombie. We all are kind of the outsiders. We're all attacking people. We're all stirring up conflict, and I think it's really interesting the way the movie did that. And if you don't understand why, rewatch this movie. You can definitely tell that's the kind of the subtext that George Romero was trying to have in here. And it sounds deep for a zombie movie, but it really does work for this movie because, again, there's just more and more zombies multiplying more and more and more. And that's very much like humans. There's more and more of us multiplying, and there's nothing you can do to stop us, and they're all the same, just like humans are very much the same. And I definitely really love seeing that. I think that message was definitely very well done. But the cinematography is gorgeous. This movie, every shot in the mall looks amazing. It looks fantastic. It looks like they really are in this mall, and it looks gorgeous, and it's a beautiful looking movie. I don't think it's dated. I really don't. Something I really admire though is the use of just practical effects. It's something that is so refreshing. Of course, they didn't have special effects back then. They could have done some stuff, but I'm pretty sure it was all practical. And the zombies were real. Like I said in my Night of the Living Dead review, they used actual people for these zombies, and it really is more effective that way because it just gives you that feeling of, oh shit, any one of these people could turn out like that, and we have no idea what's going to happen. And I think that really is what makes it more harrowing and more scary. Is just knowing that any second these people could die. And I think that's very well handled the way they do that. And that's one of my favorite things about both of these movies is the way that George Romero handles genuine scares. He really knows what's scary and what's not. Particularly the climax of this movie, which the music, something I really liked, that the music isn't particularly scary in this one. In fact, there's the end credits, there's like happy music playing. It's kind of interesting. And I think the creepy undertone of that is definitely very good. And I don't know if George A. Romero kind of inspired that, but the trend of how like a creepy little girl singing or just, happy music playing in a horror movie is never a good sign. I kind of feel like this movie started that because there's happy music playing and there's this gruesome stuff going on, and it's really interesting. And Dario Argento's score is fantastic to this movie. It's dark when it needs to be, but it's also kind of witty at points because you just think of what they're doing. And what they're doing isn't meant to be funny, but they're playing fun music because what they're doing is interesting. And I think it definitely was very interesting. And you know what? Let's just talk about the end because I really do want to talk about the ending to this movie. Of course, and this is spoilers if you guys haven't seen the movie. The scene where the motorcyclers are using, bubbles, and they're using all those toys to like hurt the zombies and things like that and distract them is very interesting the way they do that. I mean, obviously, yes, this is kids stuff, but I kind of thought of it as they need to take whatever they have to defeat these zombies. Even if this is something as stupid as like bubbles, they need to do whatever they can to attack them. They need to do whatever they can to distract them and make sure that they are not, that they are spared. And the way the motorcyclist did that, I thought was definitely very interesting, and I really liked that. The editing I thought was perfect this movie as well. There are 3 different cuts this movie. I watched the theatrical cut because I just wanted to. I heard the extended cut is better. Maybe I'll give it a watch sometime. But I thought the theatrical cut was great because while the original cut I thought was a bit, didn't have as much to it, this I felt it more because you had enough time for talking and for kills, and they did a very good job of balancing the two. And this movie never felt too much. Like, it never felt like there was too much dialogue and that there was too many kills. It felt very equal, and it worked very well with the environment of the movie. In any other movie, I don't think it would have worked as well, but because the environment in this movie, I think that's why it worked as well as it did. And also, the alternate ending to this movie, I really do want to talk about this because this is very interesting. As you guys know, the movie does end with Peter killing all of those zombies, and he bursts out of the room. They go and, him and Francine, they go into that helicopter to an uncertain future. And the original script, they were actually supposed to kill themselves. As we know, Peter contemplates suicide, he doesn't go through with it. In the original movie, he did go through with it, and I think while that would be an effective ending, I think the ending of the movie really does go with the theme of these humans thinking they can beat these zombies and that they are more powerful, and that no matter what happens, they're not going to give up. Even though people are telling them, oh, this is not safe, you can't do this anymore. It's just, you can't attack them. They are thinking, look, let's not give up. Let's attack with whatever we have. Let's use the weapons that we have. And that's something I thought was definitely really great, and I think that really is what the ending shows very well. And even though we know Peter and Francine probably aren't going to make it, they at least made an attempt to, and I think that really is what the movie's trying to say. In dire situations, you should at least try to survive and not be like the whole bunch of people that don't want to survive. And that final shot where we see all those zombies and then the helicopter in the air, it's incredible because you're realizing how bad this situation is and how civilization is basically dead. There's no more left, and there's only a few people left on Earth, and they're all soon going to be zombies, and it's very interesting to think about, and I definitely really love seeing that. It really makes you terrified of zombie apocalypse. I mean, if you were terrified of zombie apocalypse, you would be in this movie. Also, this movie is a lot more like The Walking Dead. If you know how brutal Walking Dead can be, I don't think this is as bad as that, just because the way the movie goes. I do definitely give it credit for being as bloody as it is, but the Walking Dead, I do think, is a bit bloodier at points. It definitely has been, and the effects are more up to par with today's standards. But I do think this still does hold up today. A lot of people say, oh, it looks very cheesy and very dated. I really don't think it does at all, and that's something I really loved about the movie. I also really love, this is one of those movies where when you think it's over, it's not over, and that's something I thought was great. You can also tell they had a much bigger budget to this movie. The budget is much bigger, and that gave them a lot more a lot more room to do some things like go into this mall and use some products and mess around with some of the things like that. It's very interesting, and it's something I definitely really did love, because it really showed how they were able to do more and how that really enhanced the movie overall, and that's something I thought was definitely very well done, and I overall really enjoyed it. And overall, guys, Dawn of the Dead is an absolutely fantastic movie. It, I think, is a masterpiece. One of the probably the best zombie movie I have seen. It's very dark, it's very scary, and the makeup as well on these zombies, like I said, they look very real, they look great, and if you really do want to look back, I would say watch Night of the Living Dead, but I think this one is more interesting because of the fact that there was just more technology, and there's more of a situation going on in this one. I definitely would recommend checking this one out, mainly because of because of the violence, because of the characters. It's just interesting to see, you can definitely tell The Walking Dead, all those things, they were based off of this movie. And even though Night of the Living Dead was the first zombie movie, this was the first one that could get away with a lot of things, and that I think is why it's as good as it is. That's why it's as effective as it is. And something else I didn't tell you guys, Night of the Living Dead, they couldn't even use blood in that movie. They had to use chocolate syrup. They had to use chocolate syrup because they didn't want to use blood, and in this movie, they did use blood, and that's something that, again, they had much more of a chance with, and you definitely see that in this movie. You can tell they had a much bigger budget, and I think that overall is why this movie is better than the first one, and overall, I'm going to give Dawn of the Dead a 5 out of 5, or an A+. I absolutely love this movie. It is one of the best of the 31 Days of Horror movies by far. It is terrifying, it is scary, and it is everything I want in a zombie movie, definitely. I will be reviewing Day of the Dead. That will not be coming tomorrow. I do not have time tomorrow. I will be seeing a play in school tomorrow in New York, because I'm going on a field trip, and I'm seeing Curious Incident of Dog in the Nighttime. And if you guys remember, that is the play that won for best play at the Tonys. So I will be reviewing that to you guys, but unfortunately I'm gonna have to not be able to watch Day of the Dead, because that's so my review for that will be out Thursday. But I hope you guys enjoy this review. Let me know what you guys saw this movie, have seen. Which do you prefer, Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead? I'd love to hear your thoughts. It kind of seems like you either love Night of the Living Dead or you love Dawn of the Dead. It seems like you can love both movies, which I do love both movies. I just think Dawn of the Dead is a much more impressive movie overall than Night of the Living Dead. But let me know what you guys saw this movie. I absolutely love this movie. I think it's a masterpiece, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of The Flash, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.